So by 1995, Disney was riding on such a success that Saturday Night Live, Mad TV, and even Animaniacs were spoofing their success. However, that success was about to be small talk because an achievement later that year, decades in the making, would shake up the whole world. Hello, I'm Jordan White, and welcome to the single most exciting interview of my career. Ladies, meet Alvy Ray Smith, the co-founder of the company that made Toy Story possible, Pixar.
Yeah, hello.
Hello. We're so excited to have you. Thank you for joining us.
I
didn't know whether I was going to be able to or not.
Oh, well, I'm so glad you were.
Yeah, it's always been touch and go around here.
I've been at SIGGRAPH all week in Los Angeles, but my wife got sick. So we rushed home today to get her home, back in comfortable place in time to do this. I didn't know whether I was going to be able to make it or not.
Well, that's very kind of you to take time out of your day when your wife is sick. We appreciate it. Okay.
Oh, we are very glad to have you here because this is Disney's 100th anniversary, and we cannot express the significant moment in the history of Disney and in many cases the world that was going to be Toy Story 1995. And
we didn't know either. We didn't know it was going to be such a big deal.
I don't think my parents did either. I mean, they just thought it was a good movie to watch for us kids.
Yeah.
We had decided 20 earlier that we would be the first people to make a completely computer generated movie. That's what we decided on Long Island in 1975. And to tell the truth, we did not know it was going to take us 20 years to get there. If we had known that, we might have lost courage or something along the way.
Wow.
But basically, we just stumbled along until it happened. And we had no idea, of course, that it was going to be Pixar. We were just people doing this thing, the movie. We call it the movie.
Okay, so first question, Alvy. Where did the idea to create any kind of image in a computer first spawn? Was it the IBM Research Labs, the Bell Research Labs? Was it the space race? Was it that Whitney guy who made those symmetrical images as the title sequence for Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo?
Yeah, Jordan's right. I mean, when did the computer graphic imaging begin?
None of those. Well, I don't know whether you know it or not, but I wrote a book recently. In fact, if you'll allow me, I'll show it off to you.
Oh,
A Biography of the Pixel. Okay.
Congratulations.
And it's the story of making pictures with computers, not Pixar or John Whitney or Disney, nothing specific, the whole thing, because it's a huge, vast thing. And so
right. There's many software applications for it.
I went to find the first. Where were the first pictures on computers? And I was blown away when I found out that the first computer graphic made of pixels was on the first computer. The first computer, and by that I mean the first electronic stored program computer, which is what we mean by a computer today, which is called, believe it or not, Baby. The name of that machine was Baby. It was built in 1947-48 in Manchester, England, and its display was bits in a raster scan. And people made pictures with that, and I have them in that book. And they made interactive video games. And so I was kind of stunned to find out there was this history dating back to roughly 1950 of pictures made on computers by computers with the assistance of computers. So you can see that's kind of a long leap from to 1995 and Toy Story. A lot of stuff happened.
I mean, I'm just amazed that it goes all the way back then. I mean, even back when Walt Disney was actually being like being kind of, well, he was being, well, a lot of Hollywood back then was being investigated under the McCarthy administration at that time. But but they didn't even know that this baby thing existed.
No, I don't know whether you know our history with Disney. It started way before Toy Story. With a system called CAPS. Do you know about CAPS?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, we've been talking about it throughout the
Okay.
history sessions with Jordan lately. So,
Oh,
and
okay. So,
we've all seen the Pixar story before, so we think of
oh, okay. So,
a general
so,
idea of that history, but we would love to hear your perspective.
okay. And if you want to concentrate more on Toy Story, I certainly understand. But I can paint the whole story if you like. CAPS was what married the two companies together. Disney came to us to digitize the old cell animation process, and that's what CAPS did. And we we did such a good job, and they did. So we did the production side, and they did the logistics side. You know, keeping track of where everything is. They wrote the code for that. We did all the paint and fill and scan and composite and all that stuff. The movie, and they did a bang up job. We did a bang up job. There was a mutual admiration society built between the two companies. And this is between the technologists who really understood what was going on. We didn't care who was at the top claiming to run things, right? So that relationship is what eventually caused the Disney purchase of Pixar to happen. It was when that first happened, that purchase happened, people said, are you surprised or dismayed, Alvy? I says, no, what took them so long is my question. That was way back then. They could have picked us up for a song right then, instead of waiting to whatever it was, 2006 or containing 7 billion.
2006, yeah, most likely that was it. So I know about Ed Catmull and his animated hand and some of the other technology and stuff, but sometimes I wonder how. I mean, I don't know if this might be a ridiculous question, but how did any of these people on your end come about with creating the technology to help make Toy Story possible?
How? Well, we had the desire. I guess that was the key thing. We had the desire to make the first movie, and we didn't know it was going to be 3D character animation, by the way, a la Toy Story. We would have been happy if it had been 2-dimensional cell animation, so long it was completely generated on a computer. So CAPS doesn't count because the drawings are all done with pencil by animators on paper. And then those were digitized, and from then on it was done in the computer. But so CAPS doesn't count. It's a good step along the way, and we learned a lot about how to produce, the logistics of producing a movie, so that we were ready for that aspect when we got there. But we didn't know for a long time that it would be this kind of 3-dimensional look of Toy Story that really grabbed hold of people.
Well,
what are you showing me?
That's just Sarah's little thing. She has a likeness. She has a strong liking for puppets. So she's a Muppet fan, and she enjoys that stuff. Even Jim Henson actually later on in his life experimented with a digital puppetry technology called the Waldo.
I've heard of the Waldo.
Right, yeah, I want to lab lib on the chattiest people.
Well,
okay, so how did for one thing, there are lots of different directions that making pictures with computers has gone. My first encounter was with paint programs at Xerox Palo Alto Research Center. One of my best friends went to work there in the early 70s, and this was when Xerox PARC was where the desktop computing environment that we all now use began. Windows-based user interface, mouse, laser printer, internet, although it was called Ethernet at the time. Just basically what we're doing right now began there. And my friend added color pixels to it. And he wrote a paint program called Super Paint And when I saw that, I said, oh, that's me. I grew up as an artist in New Mexico, and I happened to be good at computers, and I was looking for some way to put those two things together. And there it was, a paint program in full color on a computer. And once I got started, I realized, gee, nobody else is working here yet. Everything I touch is going to be first. And so I started making art as fast as I could, and I started writing code. I came up with the HSV to RGB color transformation. As an artist, I didn't know how to mix colors from red, green, and blue. That was awkward. I mean, how do you get pink out of red, green, and blue?
Yeah, they
So,
call it like additive mixing. I mean, it's a different from like the subtractive mixture of colors with typical paint.
so I mean, I went to my friend. I went to my friend Dick that built Super Paint, and I says, "How do you? We artists choose a color from a color wheel, and we either darken it or we lighten it with black and white. How do you? What's the transform from hue, saturation, and value, which is what I called it then, to RGB, which is what this computer understands?" He says, "I don't know. Nobody's ever done that." Ooh, so I
Wow.
went home that night and wrote my first algorithm.
That's pretty
HSV
cool.
RGB trans. But it was that easy, right? I was the first guys on the island. You got to name everything and pick the low hanging fruits and so forth. It was so much fun. And it just blew people's minds. They would come in and they would see this program and they go, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Because nobody has seen color pixels before. Just they hadn't seen it. Now we're so blasé about it, it's second nature, but then nobody had seen it.
Wow.
And so that was the angle I came in, artistic angle, two-dimensional painting. And meanwhile, over in Utah, the University of Utah, the group there, the research group there, was interested in simulating reality, I think is a good way to put it, where they would make pictures of things that were real. Not this artsy stuff that I was doing, but real things, objects, planes, boats, cars, toasters, real stuff. And so they started mastering how to use perspective and three-dimensional geometry and rendering technologies to make pictures, but they were very crude. You mentioned Ed's hand. Ed's the co-founder, that. Ed's the co-founder of Pixar with me. I was just with him down in LA. That was as fancy as you could get in 72. It was just really kind of boring, gray shaded graphics. A colleague of his, also at Utah, Fred Park, did a first face. He did a shaded animated face, same time as Ed did his hand. And then at Cornell University, the students there made the first color shaded graphics movie. So 72 was when it just kind of, the computers were really slow and everything took hours to do. And it was awful. You don't want to know how awful it was.
I bet you it. I can tell you that they took up the whole college classroom.
Yeah, no, it is. So what I like to talk about these days is I was on 3 panels at SIGGRAPH this last week, so I've been talking my brains out. So I always talk about Moore's Law. Moore's Law is the secret of the modern universe, especially computer graphics. Moore's Law, I think everybody knows that Moore's Law says that the density of components on an integrated circuit chip will double every 18 months. I don't know about you, but that didn't mean a thing to me. I had no intuition other than that means computers are going to get faster and cheaper. I knew that's what it meant, but I had no intuition for it until I translated it into the powers of 10, 10-year increments instead of 2-year increments. And it comes out in that transformation to be this. This is my version of Moore's Law. Anything good about computers gets an order of magnitude better every 5 years. And an order of magnitude is a factor of 10. Why did I use order of magnitude instead of factor of 10? Well, we puny humans can't think more than an order of magnitude ahead. We just can't. We top out at a factor of 10. We have to change how we conceptualize the world at a factor of 10, at an order of magnitude. Okay, Moore's law says you're going to hit one of those reconceptualizations every 5 years, starting in 1965. So if you think of the Moore's law factor being 1 in 1965, it's sitting at over 100 billion today, and it's about to hit 1 trillion. That means today, anything good about computers, speed, size, cost, anything good is 1 trillion times better than it was in 65 when I made my first computer graphic. See, we can't think about what 1 trillion means. You just can't. You have to live it. That's the only way. You have to. I and my colleagues have just ridden that explosion, that supernova explosion of engineering power to get to where we are today. And without that engineering marvel, we could not have done. It doesn't matter how much we wanted to make the movie, we couldn't have.
Yeah, that sounds like the measurements they use are kind of like the opposite of deep time. You have like a perspective of measurements going on here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a form. I like the order of magnitude version of Moore's law because I think it gives you an intuition, and it also says you can't know what's coming next. We've never been able to say what's coming next, including the engineers who are doing the chips. They can't figure out how to make the chips denser until they get to the next order of magnitude, and then they can say, "Oh, I see how to make it better, denser," and they take it to the next notch. So every time I hear about the death of Moore's law, I go, "I don't think so. I don't think so." All the engineers are riding that same curve as we are.
Well,
But the long and the short of it is, we did get the horsepower. When we hit about 1 million X, in about we 95, we got Toy Story right out of it. So, and now, okay, at 1 million X, we got Toy Story. We're sitting at almost 1 trillion X today. So, awesome things are happening out there. Now we're doing all these renderings in real time. What? Yes, with the these new chips. The names are escaping me.
TSMC, Samsung, Intel, NVIDIA, AMD.
What's the Unity? What's the
Qualcomm.
Unity? What's the Unity
What?
device called?
The what team?
The Unreal?
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
Oh,
And
Unreal
Unreal
Engine.
Engine.
That's the Epic game.
Yes, thank you. Is now generating. So back at Lucasfilm, where I was in the early 80s, my partners and I sat around, these geniuses, I call them my geniuses, figured out that if we could put 80 million polygons into each picture, then the resulting complexity would keep the normal human being happy. And of course, 80 million polygons in the low 80s was impossible to do. Nobody had ever done that many polygons in a single picture. But we thought we've got to have at least that if we're ever going to get to the movie. And we'll worry about the speed. We were willing to wait a day or two for one frame to compute, if that's what it took at that resolution. The Unreal Engine is doing it in real time. They're completely rendering that many polygons in real time. I mean, bam, bam, bam. It's happening right before your eyes. Now, I know Moore's law. This is what I was trying to say. I know Moore's law really well. I've lived it. And I knew we were going to get there sooner or later, but I'm still mind blown that we got there, and it's happening now.
Yeah,
Now we're headed off into the AI universe.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's even
that's
crazy I know we haven't seen the same kind of exponential growth as, being around for that whole journey, but I was born in the year Toy Story came out, and I still feel like the changes from then to now are unfathomable a little bit.
Well, you just made a great point. Moore's law is an exponential curve. The thing about an exponential curve is it doesn't matter where you start. It looks the same as you look into the future. You just
Right.
said it.
Right. That's what it feels like.
No walls.
It's crazy.
Just no
Okay, I think
walls.
we're ready for the next question, Jordan.
All right. Well,
They like to keep us on task.
Yeah,
we got
well,
we got a timekeeper here, and Sarah.
Well, I know about how Ed Catmull, John Lasseter, and Steve Jobs Steve Jobs was a funder, and then Ed Catmull was the engineer, and then John Lasseter was the artist. I know how they started off with the tin toy, and that won an
Let's
Oscar.
leave Steve Jobs out of this, right? He was only the money. That's all he was. Really, that's all
Oh,
he
Yeah,
was.
yeah, Jordan, cut to the chase.
All right, so originally, they thought they could make a tin toy Christmas special for ABC, but then certain exponential things were starting to go into place, and then when they decided to figure out a special wasn't really working, suddenly came the moment that would suddenly shift things forever. Oh heck, let's just make a movie. Dream achieved. And now we're getting ready to make a movie with a working title, Toy Story. So, and the people were about to learn some new, some of these old dogs were about to learn some new tricks. So did the animators
what was it like? Yeah, what was it like when the announcement for Pixar to make the movie came about?
Well, here's my version of all that. We were at Lucasfilm, and in about 84 or so, George Lucas and his wife got divorced. And suddenly we had no financial support anymore. And Ed and I, we were still 5 years shy of having enough Moore's Law horsepower to generate a movie. What are we going to do? So I went to Ed and I said, let's start a company. Now, this is two geeks talking to each other, right? We didn't know anything about starting companies. And so we went across, he agreed, and he said, well, what shall we do? And I said, well, we can't do movies yet, but we've built a special computer called the Pixar image computer for George Lucas. Let's just take that prototype and manufacture it and sell that. And that'll cover us for 5 years, and we can keep our group together until we get to the magic Moore's Law number. So Ed agreed, and we walked across the street to a bookstore and bought How to Start Company books. I bought two, he bought two others. And then the two of us wrote a business plan that not about movies, but about building this hardware to pay for this group with the goal to be movies eventually. And then we had to raise the money, capitalize the firm. We went through 46 funding possibilities. Everybody said no. Everybody said no, except Steve Jobs. He was the last guy we went to. We had actually already met him once. He had called us, Ed and me, down to his mansion in Woodside one day after he'd been booted out of Apple. And he said, I want to buy you guys from George Lucas and run you as my next company. We went, nah, we want to run our own company, but we'll take your money. And he said, okay. But he got laughed out of the Lucasfilm boardroom because his number was a lot lower than General Motors, who was shopping us at the same time. But the General Motors deal fell through. And Ed and I were frantic. We'd been through 45 funding opportunities, and this was the big one, and it just fell through. And so we came up with a Hail Mary idea, which was, let's call Steve and tell him to make that same offer again at half the valuation. Everybody's they're out of time, they're out of patience, they'll go for it. And Lucasfilm did go for it this time. So he became our venture capitalist. He didn't buy, a lot of people say he bought. No, he didn't buy us. He funded us. He was a majority shareholder, and he owned 70% and the employees owned 30%. So everybody in the company owned part of the company. So that's the beginning of the story. And then we built hardware. And to tell you the truth, our hardware was good hardware, but it didn't, we went broke 3 times during the next 5 years. And the only reason that wasn't news was Steve was so embarrassed about going broke that he would write a check so that we wouldn't go broke. He would tear Ed and me apart, but he would write another check, and he kept us alive. So the most positive thing I can say about Steve is he kept us alive financially, I think for all the wrong reasons. Not to be embarrassed was his reason, but who cares what his reason was? He kept us alive for 5 years. And at the end of 5 years, here's Moore's Law. It finally hits the magic number that we've been waiting for. And right on cue, Disney knocks on our door and says, okay, guys, that movie you always wanted to make, let's make it. And they will pay for it. That was the clincher. Disney saved Steve Jobs financially. And of course, Steve had a brilliant move right then. Oh, okay. So then we made the movie and we showed it to New York critics, and they went nuts because they saw that this was going to change everything, right? And at that point, Steve had this brilliant idea, again, as a business idea, nothing to do with movies, to take the company public, just on the excitement, on the promise that it was going to be a success. We had no money in the bank, just had this movie in the can, as they say. And that gamble paid off for him. He became a billionaire overnight when the company went public.
Whoa.
So, I don't begrudge that at all. He came through with us for money. All other aspects of him are horrible. He's a terrible man. But
oh man,
he's a tyrant, and he lied all the time, and it was all about himself. Everything was about himself.
you
So,
might say the same thing.
We kept him out of the building. The way we managed Pixar was to keep him out of the building, because he screwed everything up when he came in.
Oh.
So all the stuff about how wonderful baloney.
Oh yeah. So definitely the animators might suddenly had to learn mathematics and science and physics questions like the hypotenuse.
No, they did. No, they didn't. They didn't have to learn mathematics. They had to learn how to interface to our programs, but they didn't do it through mathematics. They did it through user interface.
Ooh,
So
yeah.
let me talk to you. So the best hire of my life was John Lasseter. He hauled me down into the archives. He hauled both Ed and me down into the archives of Disney one time when we were visiting, and showed us he said, what do you want to see? And I said, I want to see the dancing elephant from the dancing hippo from Fantasia. And he went, okay. And he went over and he found the original Preston Blair drawings of the dancing hippo in Fantasia. I'm a total aficionado on this stuff, and I was out of my mind with delight. And then he said, now what? And I said, oh, I want to see the pink elephant scene, the drunken elephant scene out of Dumbo. Then we saw that. Okay. And we started melding right there. That's next thing you know, he didn't tell us he had gotten fired from Disney, but he had. We snapped him up. It didn't matter why he left Disney. We snapped him up. We couldn't touch him while he was part of Disney. That wouldn't have been fair. So we snapped him up, and he was the secret sauce that made we had all the technology pretty much worked out by then, but we didn't have. I foolishly thought I was going to be the animator until I met John and realized, oh, he's got something so much more special than I'll ever have. It was foolish of me even think I could do it. I could make things move, but I couldn't make you believe they were conscious and felt pain and connived. And
so yeah,
we're human.
we're
We're
given
human.
so you were given the artistic experience from Lasseter then.
Yeah, well, I had the artistic experience from painting. I grew up painting, and I knew about artists, and I just thought I could map that into motion, but I couldn't map it into emotion. That John Lasseter did that for me. And once I was doing a piece called Andre and Wally B, and it was the first short subject out of Lucasfilm Pixar. And there you go. Yes, okay. So that's good. So then I hired John. I just gotten to the storyboard stage, and it was really crude. And I hired John. John came in and he looked at my storyboard and he says, can I make a few suggestions? And I went, sure, that's why you're here. Well, he basically saved my bacon by making the character much more interesting and adding a bumblebee. You know, it's just he added a great story and he made the characters lovable. You know, he's an animator. He gives life to drawings. It's not just making them move. He gives them life, and that's, you know. Then we did several short subjects. Obviously, you know about them.
There were
But
Easter
he was
eggs.
He was there and primed and ready to go when Disney knocked on the door. In fact, I had a problem with him at first because he said, "Yeah, there you go." Oh yeah, he had done Luxo Junior by then.
And Red's Dream and Knick Knack and Tin Toy and
that's pretty much it. If you count Andre and Wallaby as well. We're leaving one out, right? Red's Dream.
Red's Dream.
That might be it. That might be it. There's four or five
I've seen
there.
that early Pixar story about that.
Yeah,
It's like you dream through the perspective of a unicycle.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So okay, I told you that John had been fired by Disney. We didn't know this, but he had been fired by Disney, so he kind of resented Disney. And when they said, "Hey, let's make that movie," Ed and I were, at last, all our dreams are coming true. We always wanted to work with Disney, and here they are. They're going to pay for the production. They're going to save Steve Jobs' investment. But John didn't want to work with them. And we were going, oh my God, what are we going to do now? We've got everything we wanted except our main artist refuses to work with Disney. So at that point, Jeffrey Katzenberg steps forward. He was head of it at Disney still. And he knew what the problem was. I think he had been the guy that fired John, probably. So he called it.
I think that was Eisner at the time.
They hauled him down. They hauled us all down to a meeting in Burbank. We took Steve Jobs along because he wanted to meet this guy Katzenberg, who's another tyrant. And the goal of the meeting was, well, here's what Katzenberg said. He said, "All right, John, I know the problem. You think I'm a tyrant and refuse to work with me. But what I want you to do for the rest of the day, you and the other people from Pixar, talk to anybody here at Disney that you want to, anybody, directors, animators, anybody, about what it's really like to work here and for me. And I think you'll get a different story than what you might have in mind." So we did that, hours and hours that day. And at the end of the day, we're walking out. John and I are walking out side by side to the parking lot to get in our rent-a-car to go to the Burbank airport and fly back up here to the Bay Area. And I kind of turned nervously to John and said, "Well, what do you think?" He says, "I can do it." And that's the moment when I knew we had a movie. We still had to execute it, but I knew it was going to happen. We had the talent, we had the backing, we had the technical skills. You know, it was all just sitting there.
Oh well,
that's my version of the Toy Story.
Yeah. So we've got yourself. If you were gonna make the first CG anime feature, you needed to have it be accessible to all audiences, and having the Disney name on there was gonna make it accessible to all audiences. Even if Jeffrey just wanted to make it a little more edgy and stuff, almost like he wanted it to be adult or something like that. But still,
we didn't listen. John, it was John Lasseter's sensibilities that guided the whole thing.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. So in order to make this movie work, not only did you have to have a good script, with one of the script writers being Joss Whedon, who is the showrunner for Buffy the Vampire Slayer and the director for the first Avengers movie, from 2012. We also have one heck of a killer cast. We've got Tom Hanks as Woody and Tim Allen as Buzz in the lead role. And we've got Jim Varney as Slinky, Wallace Shawn as Rex. We've got Don Rickles as Mr. Potato Head, Annie Potts as Bo Peep, and
See, that's where Disney
and John
really came to
Ratzenberger,
blows. They
who
could
would
put
be
that
with the
that team
studio for
together.
a long, long time, he was Ham, and this was all seeming to work out together, but then you decide to show the movie on a bunch of storyboard story reels, and it, well, at first it didn't really seem to work. Not only was the thing so doggone long, but turns out Woody was such an unlikable, sarcastic character. And then
Yeah.
Yeah. What was it like for you back at that early presentation?
I wasn't there, to be honest. So, but I heard all about this and how basically you had to get back to John's original. He would never have allowed a unlikable character into one of his stories. So
Yeah.
just had to get back to basics and not let the bigwigs at Disney dominate where they weren't
Yeah, because it seems like
necessary.
with that early story, was relying way too much on their suggestions.
Well, so kind of where you're talking about some of the sandpaper between the two companies at this point. Katzenberg broke away after that to become DreamWorks, to start the PDI DreamWorks animation company. And the first movie, and he knew that Pixar was working on Bugs Life. And he kind of he took that idea, which he shouldn't have, and came out with Ants. And made sure that it came out before Bugs Life. So, I mean, people at Pixar were furious that he took inside knowledge. But I thought it didn't matter. Bugs Life was an enjoyable movie, and Ants was about, Nazis.
Oh man. So
Yeah, and Bugs Life incorporated a new program feature that multiplied the crowd scene.
yeah, definitely. So the first scene that was animated for Toy Story was the part where the toy soldiers are going down to the room.
Isn't that a lovely scene? I just saw it again yesterday at SIGGRAPH. They had the greatest hits for 50 years, and of course, clips from Toy Story were in it, and they included that soldiers coming down the rope is kind of swinging as they come down. I love that scene.
Yeah. It must have been.
Yeah. Did you work on that scene, or
I
did you
did
work
not.
on a different?
I'm not an animator, and by then I had left. Steve Jobs and I just didn't like each other at all. So I had to get him out of my life. And once I realized that Toy Story was underway, John was happy. We had it going. I departed and started another company. So I wasn't there for the actual production of Toy Story.
Oh, that's
I was there for the screenings, of course, and I've tracked it closely, but I was not there. I had to get Steve Jobs out of my life. He was
I know you feel, if you feel the same way about corporate tyrants. Some of us, a lot of people right now are feeling bad about corporate tyrants. So can you remember the absolute first time any audience outside of Disney or Pixar, or what you mentioned earlier, the New York Film Critics Association, saw this movie, and how did they respond?
Truly, the first reaction that blew my mind was the New York Film Critics, because I think there were two movies that got taken on that trip, and I guess Disney must have taken them to the critics, and they thought the other movie was the one the critics would respond to, and they just sort of threw in Toy Story as something else they were working on. Well, the first movie got discounted completely, and Toy Story they went nuts about. So to me, it was no surprise. I've watched all these movies. They're short movies that John Lasseter had generated. They're always good, right? They always just appeal to people so strongly, including us technical guys, right? Let me tell you a story about that. Luxo Jr. with the lamp, playing ball with was it the older Luxo and the younger Luxo? Yeah, okay. So that was John's first try there. Was we had just hired him, and he wanted to prove to the other animators in the world, that computers were not antagonistic to high-class animation, because all animators just assume that computers were linear and rigid and jagged and mechanical and couldn't possibly do animation. John knew otherwise, so he just decided to animate something on his desk. Well, we all at Lucasfilm had a Luxo lamp on our desks. So he grabbed the Luxo lamp and turned it into Luxo Junior. Okay. And then after he showed it, he kind of waited around for comments from the high technologists that did the technology at Pixar and Lucasfilm to comment. This is still at Lucasfilm. And in particular, Jim Blinn, who's very stern looking, one of our geniuses, but he's very stern looking. He's not stern at all. He's a sweetie pie, actually, but he looks stern. He came marching over to John's desk, and John said he was just sitting there quivering that he had done something technically wrong. And Jim Blinn's question was, is it a mother or a father? And at that point, and to John, it didn't matter, right? It's a parent and child. He didn't do a gender map at all. So he was just tickled pink that was the question that this high technologist had, was about story. It was nothing to do with it. Now, there were a lot of innovations. Technically, there was the first time we had light sources in the frame. There was shadows of objects onto themselves. There was a lot of stuff that had never been done before, but that didn't matter. It was the story that mattered.
Wow.
And the other animators saw it, and of course they were sold. Oh, if you can do that, then our art form is going to be at home with computers.
Oh, definitely. So essentially, since the New York Film Critics Association was so blown away by Toy Story, Toy Story, they decided they would help give Toy Story a publicity boost, and Toy Story opened the day before Thanksgiving, 1995, with a budget of I don't know how many millions of dollars, but it's far less than what this James Cameron guy was doing with Titanic. It made some money and ushered in a whole new era of
Jordan,
animation.
what was the exact date? What November? What?
November? Hang on. Oh man! Oh my golly!
I'm just curious.
I know, right? I mean, the date of Thanksgiving, changes throughout the years, right, Jordan? I mean,
I'm just
Not
thinking.
November
much,
the
though, not
22nd
much.
of 1995. November.
I was wondering if it came
Yes.
out on my actual birthday, like the day I was born, but 2 days. I was born 2 days before Toy Story.
Oh, as awesome!
No way.
It's almost as if you grew up. So yes.
Wait a minute. Julie, you were born just 2 days away from the birth of Toy Story?
Yeah, November 20th, 1995.
What a bunch of kids you are.
Well, I saw that.
I'm older than Toy Story.
Yeah. I saw the movie when I was like 4 years old, and I thought it was spectacular.
So was I.
And then other innovations later throughout the 90s.
And you remembered it? You still remember it from the first time you saw it at 4?
Yeah, I was in Ohio back then.
So Alvy,
Yeah.
hey man, I don't think without Toy Story and without you, I probably wouldn't have a career in software engineering and as a freelance technical consultant, developing apps and websites and transferring analog to digital media, and also doing video editing. Now, here comes this.
I'm glad to have helped.
Yeah. So here comes the single most important technical question anyone is ever going to ask anyone in the current year, 2023.
Whoa.
Given the multiple strikes in Hollywood, the rise of AI, and the increasing amount of deception on social media, do you feel guilty or ashamed of creating this ideological CGI monster that would eventually morph into generative AI and threaten humanity's existence? Or do you take pride and comfort in the absolutely amazing things people have been able to create with computers with or without AI?
So let me try to be a little bit nuanced here. Well, first of all, let me give you a little context for what I'm about to say. When I came to graduate school at Stanford in 1965, they had just created a new department there called computer science.
I have a bachelor's degree in
And
computer science.
I came to there weren't computer science departments before then.
I know.
So I was one of the first computer science students. And the reason I came to Stanford was because they had a subject there that I wanted to learn about. It was called artificial intelligence. And I went, oh, wow, what a sexy idea that is. That maybe we could understand how this works with computer models. That's what the promise of the, now I think of it as a marketing term. That AI is such a good marketing term, they revive it every 10 years and get another huge sales pitch out of it, especially with the military.
Oh.
But after 2 years at Stanford in AI, I said, you know what? I don't think this is going to happen in my lifetime. I'm going to change to something that will actually happen in my lifetime, like making the first movie. Well, I did that, or I helped do that. And gee, AI has been moving along. It's no longer kind of simple-minded like it was when I
Yeah, it must be the Moore's law.
started in it. And I've
Yeah,
been
it is the
tracking it
Moore's
because I'm
law.
still fascinated. I still want to
And-
know how this works. This is what I want to know how this works. And so I've been watching it and watching it. And all of a sudden I'm going, wait a minute, maybe I misjudged. This is starting to look really interesting all of a sudden. And you know, you mentioned generative AI as the picture version.
Stable diffusion.
Diffusion idea is the picture version. And GANs. I was in Cambridge University with my wife, who's a professor here at Berkeley. It was her sabbatical. We were at Turing's College, King's College in Cambridge for a term. And when an old friend of mine, a pixel packer like I am, came to me and he said, hey, Alvy, we don't have to program anymore. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, read this paper. And he handed me a paper that I called it was a paper written at Berkeley, right here at this school. This is a 2015 paper approximately. I call it the horses zebra paper because they had trained a GAN, a neural net with 1,000 pictures, arbitrary pictures of horses, and with 1,000 pictures of zebras. And once the GAN was trained, you could hand it, the neural net, an arbitrary picture of horses, say, and it would output that exact same picture, except every horse had been replaced with a zebra, or vice versa. And I looked at that and I went, wait a minute, that's not even a well-defined problem. What's a horse? You know, what's a zebra? I mean, how does it work? And he says, that's what I'm trying to tell you. We don't know. It just works. And all of a sudden about there, I went, oh gosh, I always thought I would understand AI when I got there, or when it got there. But it dawned on me that no, we're starting to play in that part of computation theory that Alan Turing told us about in 1936 that we can't possibly know about. It's where you can't even tell the program's going to halt or not. It's just, things are so complex out there in computations that you cannot in advance know what they're going to do. For most of my career, we weren't allowed to compute on a program itself. The system would default if you tried to write on the program itself. But once you start writing, there's nothing about computation theory that says you can't write on the program. That was the part that Turing liked the most. And by the way, kind of invented artificial intelligence as well as the computer.
Oh,
Goes
that
far
far back?
Yeah, that's all in my book, by the way. He defined a stored program computer in 1936. He defined it, and he went out to build it, but he ran into bureaucratic problems, So somebody else got to it first. The people at Manchester that I told you about built Baby before Turing got a chance to build Ace, which is what he was working on. We're there now. We're now computing. I think we're now computing with these nets. I think we're computing on the program itself, and we don't know what's coming out of it. Some of the first amazing stuff is that, stable diffusion and things like that. Back to the yes, there's a lot of lying going on. Absolutely, there's a lot of lying going on, and for some reason we don't have an education system that seems to be training people to detect lies, which really that's the thing that upsets me. I mean, you can lie. It doesn't take high tech to lie. It just takes liars to lie. We have plenty of those, and okay, we just have to, people have to be taught how to distinguish lies from truth.
Yeah, it's called critical thinking. I'm pretty sure that happened courses like those in grade school past. I know I had to when I needed to do essay writing.
Yeah, well, I remember when I was in junior high school, we had a class called civics, where you actually learned how the government worked. And apparently they don't teach that anymore. People don't know how the government works. What the Constitution says.
About this civics downhill knowledge of stuff. Well, I'm gonna let you know. I wasn't really trying to give out my political opinions. I was only echoing the insane political.
I'm not trying to map anything on anybody here. I'm just trying to say that I think yes, that there's going to be a lot of lying done with pictures now.
I know. The Pope
but we already have it on social media. Just lies like crazy.
Pope with a puffer jacket, that's a fake. Pope never wears puffer jacket.
Yes, we just have to. But this is the other side. This is my real answer to your question. I think we've just started the most amazing period of picture creation that I've ever seen in my life. And I see these generative techniques, machine learning techniques, as levers of order of magnitude size, not just small change, but order of magnitude, like edge of what we can conceive size. And one of the reasons I'm sure that this is exploding as we're talking here, there's an artistic explosion starting. I mean, it's been underway for 5 years already. Right now, is because I talked to lots of artist friends, and a lot of them are thrilled because, well, here's an example I used to show when I I guess I still show when I give talks. Is I put up somebody had talked to a Stable Diffusion or Midjourney or one of those, and said generate picture of all the presidents in Pixar style. So they come up with this whole set of tiles of all the presidents done a la Pixar, supposedly, kind of goofy, cartoony Abraham Lincolns and so forth. And you look at it, you could like it or not like it, but the fact is, it just happened, really fast. And then you take one of those and say, instead of, if it had been me drawing even one of those, it would have taken at least a day and probably more for one of those pictures. And here you got them all, and you can say, okay, that was not quite right. Let's make Teddy Roosevelt have a little bit more glasses or something. You can modify. And then as you talk to the program, it adds more and more to it. You become an editor, a director, and that's just as creative as drawing with paint in the first place.
Yeah, I've actually done
that's
some
where
AI
I see
art before on Toonie art, AI art, and the results were decent, but most of them I was trying to generate looked like Picasso was trying to draw cartoons. Now, I prefer to be a guy who embraces AI. I want to try to.
I think that's wise.
I want to be the guy who is such a great optimist that he embraces it in his workflow. And I've already embraced AI into my workflow. And I want people to really calm the heck down. And I also want people to be like, you know what? We're going to tame this AI thing where we can make it our friend for like ever. And
I agree completely, Jordan. I think people are blowing it out of the water here. They're being
blowing out of proportions.
yeah. Thank you. Yes, that's the word I'm looking for. Yes, just wrong. Look for the good stuff. Yes, there are things to watch out for, and we know it's coming. I'm sure there are already fake pictures out there.
I know.
Passing as truth, but we've got to come up with schemes. Now we've had schemes. When the printing press first showed up, what happened? People printed lies right and left. It probably was what started the French Revolution. There were so many lies printed about what a whore Marie Antoinette was and so forth. It was just lies they printed because they had a printing press. And then finally we got this notion that, oh no, you have editors.
I thought the printing press was early back as the days of
double
Martin
check
Luther.
your facts, and we came up with a system. It seems to be forgotten that we have this system for trusting the press. There are things you can do. Science has a way of, you have peer review so that you try to find the truth when it can be really dicey to get hold of. And I think
that's critical thinking.
I know.
Yep.
I just wanted to leave with that note that I am such a supreme optimist, and being out.
I like to hear that. I think it's crazy to try to outthink the future, because like I said, we can't do it. For one thing, it's just that's what Moore's law says. You can't do it. Just get on the surfboard and just ride this wave, because it's crazy.
Hey, Jordan, why don't you make like an AI program to help like organize your YouTube stuff? I mean, organize playlists for
possible. It can be possible. I just I might be able to code it with JavaScript, or maybe I can ask ChatGPT Plus with Browser Pilot built in to generate some code, little pieces of it, and then I could just mold the pieces together into one thing. That's how I've developed an app before, and I can develop an app that way again, provided that you give me specific instructions, and I can definitely do that, because
okay. I've got some questions to ask here. Jordan, you're a very interesting person. You've organized this event today.
Yeah.
How do the three of you know each other? What's the binding system or organization?
Well, animation club.
I met up with Jordan in high school, and Julia was my movie buddy back in Texas before COVID. And
yeah, we started the way the club, I think, kind of started as Sarah and I would go to the movies and we would watch animated movies together. And that was kind of what we bonded over. And then during COVID, we obviously couldn't go to the theaters anymore. And so we started picking a movie we would watch on our own, and we'd talk on the phone and talk about it. And then we started doing Zoom meetings, and now it's become more talking about the actual animation. Yep.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So Sarah and Jordan are talented as well.
I'm a talented tech person. I can figure out a lot of technologies. I can figure out tech. I can figure out.
All right, Jordan. Here's the question: How do you understand how diffusion works?
Stable diffusion.
Yeah.
That is that's all written in Python. That's basically training the data sets on multiple images across the internet, and then you are pulling off a mishmash of what the computer thinks the images are supposed to look like.
I have the original paper here, and I'm having a hell of a hard time reading it. Even though I'm a PhD in technology and spent years in the field, I'm having to read this. I'm already on my 5th reading, and just now some of the equations are starting to look comfortably, like I can sort of read them. But what I'm missing is an intuition about why it works. So I'm going to keep trying. That's my goal. That's my goal for this year.
Good for you.
Why does diffusion work? Not does it work, because we know it works.
It works because you're taking multiple. What?
Sorry. I was just going to say, I unfortunately have to go. We're at the top of the hour. I want to be respectful of your time too. I have to jump off, but if you guys are going to keep chatting, that's totally fine.
Okay.
No, it's probably time for me to go too. This has been a lot of fun.
Okay,
Jordan, is this what you wanted?
Say a couple of things to you. Yeah,
Yeah,
anyway.
go for it, Sarah.
Yeah,
Go
I'm
for it.
the artsy one of the duo partnership. I'm the one that brings the emotion, personality,
Oh,
animation.
nice drawings. Yeah.
And some of the stuff I was showing you right here. I'm on the historical context, extremely brief, but yeah, the
Watch out. I have a
forward
softie
stuff
for
is
artists,
totally
you know.
important.
So, yeah.
I don't know how Buzz was able to fly at that one time, despite him not being a flying toy. Well, just quote unquote fly, not
Oh, no, don't be too rational there, Jordan. I used to point out to John Lester, like in Tin Toy, which was kind of the forerunner of Toy Story, there's a place where the toy is inside its box and it's fighting to get out, and the box has to turn around so that he can get out. But they don't show that. And I made the technical point that, gee, how did that box get turned around so the character could get out? And John says, Alvy, just flow with it. You don't need to know that.
Just go with it. Ride the surfboard, right? Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. It was so nice to meet you and super interesting to hear everything you had to say.
Okay.
and
Read my
being a
book.
computer guy
I'm glad to
myself,
tell you about
Yeah,
my
I'll
book,
be
too.
trying
Yeah.
to look for your Pixel book.
Okay.
being a computer guy myself, I loved hearing what you had to say. I believe I can do great computer stuff in the future, and even beyond when you're gone or something like that. I mean, you're like 80, so so thank you
Okay, I'm
so
getting a little
much.
bit
You know how
too
old I
touchy
am?
there.
What's my age?
80. You were born in 1943, 79, 80.
Yeah, I'm 80. I'll be 80 in next month. Yeah.
Oh,
Happy
I heard
I have a birthday next
Oppenheimer.
month
I heard
too.
that first bomb. I heard the first bomb go off. I heard the first bomb go off
I turned
when I was a kid.
32
You
next
did?
month.
Yeah.
I have a September birthday
That's
too.
crazy.
The 5th. That's a big one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Oh, yeah.
anyway, I guess it's a good time for all of us to get going.
Bye,
Okay,
guys.
Jordan?
Okay, bye,
Bye. Thank you again.
Alvy.
Night.
Bye-bye. A lot of fun.
To infinity and beyond.
To
Yeah,
infinity and
okay, yes.
beyond. Whee!